Well, as we move into the fourth week of the course here, we will dispense with the specimen arguments, the little artificial ones that I basically wrote for, for critical thinking classes, just as examples of arguments to work on, and look at real world arguments, starting with the kind of arguments you find in newspapers and the editorial page, specifically these New York Times editorials, the unsigned editorials, the ones that are just written by the editorial board and not, you look at a newspaper, you know what I mean. I like these because they're short. They have to get right to the point. They usually have a definite conclusion, main overall conclusion they're trying to establish. So it's fairly easy to see their logical structure, layout, conclusions, intermediate conclusions, premises, etc., to see the argument, and then to move fairly quickly into trying to figure out whether it's a good argument. But it is quite, it is a transition to move from these shorter arguments, simple and complex, but still shorter arguments, to real world arguments. And one of the things you'll find right away is that in trying to locate the argument, the actual argument of a piece like these, that there's stuff that doesn't really pertain to the argument. That is, that in real writing, there's background stuff, there's purely rhetorical stuff, the things that make it readable, But when you come to actually say we want to write a diagram of the argument, you just want to lay out the premises and conclusion, that you would leave out. And one of the skills that you develop as you begin to read analytically with this more in this more focused way is that you make decisions about what can be safely ignored in terms of evaluating the actual argument there. So but I think that the best thing to keep in mind is the basic fundamental principles of what we've established so far. First of all, arguments consist of premises and a conclusion. So, looking at anything that we think is an argument, we've got to find those things. We've got to identify the conclusion, and then we've got to identify the reasons given in support of the conclusion, the premises. So one of the things that you do, I think, the best way to analyze an argument is not the way really that I'm doing it in these videos, but rather to print it out, have it on paper, get a pen, and make decisions for yourself. Well, I'm going to find the overall conclusion, let's say, and I'm going to circle it. Okay. And then I'm going to find all the supporting reasons and I'm going to underline them. It gives you a way of beginning to break the thing down. Okay. And then I may actually write, or, these could be paraphrases on a separate piece of paper. I'm going to write the conclusion at the bottom. I'm going to put that horizontal line over it. I'm going to write the premises above that line. And if there's any argument for the premises, and if the premises are actually also intermediate conclusions, that is, if they have arguments for them, I'm going to put them above the premises. So it's all there for me. So I have a command of the argument now. It's actually a very powerful thing. Now I really know what the argument is. I've stripped away the rhetorical stuff. I've stripped away the extraneous information that I've been given, and I've laid it down. I've laid it bare. I've stripped it down to conclusions and premises. And now I know what the argument is. So really the best thing you can do is print the thing out, get a pen, find the conclusion and circle it, or whatever your method is, and then find the premises and underline them. And then think about whether the premises themselves can constitute intermediate conclusions, and find those little chunks of reasoning that are not the overall argument, but are part of it, right? So always, that's what I do when I'm doing it seriously. I mean, yeah, that's what I do. Is I get my pen. I like a red pen in this, and I do that. So just remember that what you're doing is going back to basics. Every argument consists of premises and a conclusion. You want to find them. Okay. Then the next step, of course, is evaluating the argument. And then you go back to basics. You go back to your principles. Well, I want to decide whether this is a good argument. And a good argument is a sound argument. And a sound argument is an argument where the premises are true and the reasoning is valid. So it's actually a very powerful thing. So I look at my premises, I ask myself whether they are true or likely to be true. And then I look at the conclusion and I ask myself whether the conclusion really does follow strongly from the premises. If I have questions about the truth of the premises, or if I have questions about the validity of the reasoning, then I have questions about the soundness of the argument. If the premises appear to me either to be obviously true or very likely to be true, and the conclusion does seem to follow from the premises, then I know that I think it's a good argument. If I have questions about either of those things, then I have questions about the soundness of the argument, the quality of the argument. So making the transition to analyzing real world arguments, which is a more complicated matter, it can be a difficult transition, but it takes practice. But it also, you have to have faith in yourself, and you have to remember, after all, I'm only dealing with an argument here, so I have to identify what it is, which means find the conclusion, main conclusion, and find the supporting reasons, the premises. And that in evaluating an argument, I'm evaluating soundness. And soundness means thinking about whether the premises are true or at least likely to be true, and evaluating validity, which is, does the main conclusion really seem to follow from the premises? So one of the ways to deal with complexity, maybe the only way to deal with complexity, is to reduce it to simplicity. And I think that we have the tools to do that.